felt very strongly over the last 12 months that conservative voters have been unfairly targeted and attacked by the media, and objectively speaking, this has actually turned out to be true. Now, research shows that conservative voters are actually taking up EVs faster than the other side of the aisle. Who would have thought this would be happening? But it does appear to actually be backed up by facts. Hello, my friends. Welcome to the channel. I'm the Electric Viking. Great to see you. Thank you for tuning in. I'm going to admit something to you. I've got to admit, I have voted conservatively most of the time through my adult life. Now, a lot of people might go, unsubscribe. I knew it. I knew there was something up with you. I knew you were a bit crazy. Well, I actually agree with Russell Brand. I think both sides of politics have, some very insane and idiotic policies and corruption and all of that stuff. I don't think there's any way we can get away from that. That's just the political movement. And we can't really do a lot to change that. Which is why I don't really agree with all the attacks from the media, all the attacks from... In fact, I feel like a lot of people on the left have been attacking the right, saying that they're, crazies and they don't support EVs, they don't support renewable energy. But actually, I don't know if that's true. Let me know what you think on that. But it appears as though, according to US research, conservative voters are actually adopting EVs faster than those who are not conservative voters. This really did surprise me. Daniel Bleakley from The Driven, who's actually an Aussie and The Driven is an Aussie website, reported on this phenomenon in the United States, which I'm Australian as well, and I'm reporting on it too, which seems kind of bizarre. But anyhow, the point here is still very interesting regardless of who is reporting on this, whether or not they're from Australia or not. Conservative voters in the US are increasingly making the switch to electric vehicles in some conservative areas. EV uptake is much higher than the national average. According to the Washington Post, EV uptake in the Republican stronghold of Plano in Texas reached 8.7% in 2022. That's 2.5% higher than the national average of 6.2%. In neighboring Denton County, also a majority Republican voting area, EV market share was 7.3%. And what's incredible about this is it's a bit more difficult to buy a Tesla in Texas. Not to mention, I see so much mocking of Texans all the time. It's like, it feels a bit over the top. It feels a bit like, come on, I've heard that before 1,000 times. Just keep making the same joke. Like, I watch the NBA finals, I watch American sports, and I hear this stuff all the time. I think it's just a bit too repetitive. But in particular, it's not really the sports world that does this so much. It's more just the general media, such as the Washington Post, the New York Times, these kinds of publications who appear to, I don't know why they think it's for some reason good for them to get clicks and to sell news by actually criticizing the left, by criticizing the right constantly. I don't really see how this is a positive for anyone. I think it just creates divisiveness. In fact, I think the media in the United States, the primary reason for divisiveness in the US. I don't think it's actually naturally in human beings in general in the US. In my experience, Americans are actually some of the friendliest people on the face of the earth. You guys know that I've said this before because I traveled in the US. I traveled around the world. I rode my bicycle around the world for 12 months, and my experience was a pretty wide one. I rode through 26 different countries, and I really had an experience that wasn't what the normal tourist does because I was living in a very different way. And my experience is that I don't think most people are as divisive as the media says they are. I think the media tries to create this divisiveness because it simply sells clicks for them. Therefore, the media's painting and portrayal of conservatives as being people who hate EVs and are against renewable energy isn't, as it turns out, necessarily strictly true. Now, what do you think on this? Let me know your thoughts. Interestingly, the Washington Post actually spoke to some EV owners at charging stations in the area to learn about why they decided to make the switch. While some expressed concerns around climate change, most said they were attracted by the performance and technology and the convenience and savings on fuel. Now, if you listened to a lot of people, they would say, no, conservatives don't talk like that. That's not possible. Rednecks in Texas, everyone in Texas is a redneck, this kind of stuff. And it's these kind of generalizations which are a bit crazy. I used to drive a Mercedes-Benz SUV, and I went to fill up my gas tank. It was over $4 for premium gas, Kate Allen told the Washington Post while charging her Tesla Model 3. So I went the very next day, and I traded it in for an electric vehicle. The reduced emissions was a bonus, said Allen. Now, I just want to make a point here. It's funny hearing this stuff because, yeah, I mean, I agree that this is expensive for her. And, you know, whatever you're used to basically becomes the parameters that you live by. And if that for you is expensive, then, you know, that's fair enough. But that's actually insanely cheap. I mean, gasoline and diesel, premium especially in Australia, is probably nearly twice that price. I think that actually is twice that price. In Europe, it's even more than twice that price. You can see why switching to an EV makes so much sense pretty much everywhere you are. Another EV owner, former Marine and Republican voter Tony Federico, who is now head of the local Tesla Owners Club, that's awesome, said it was about his pocketbook and environmental concerns were not really on his radar. Interesting, isn't it, how everyone approaches it from a different perspective? S&P EV data shows that Trump voting counties of Florida's St. Johns County, Indiana's Hamilton County, New Jersey's Seaside Monmouth County, and California's Kern County are all areas that voted for Trump in the 2020 election, but have higher EV uptake rates than the national average. This is something that is just like people's minds would be blowing hearing this stuff. They'd be exploding saying, this can't be true. This must be a lie. It must be false. There's some kind of fake news going on here, right? The Washington Post says some Republican lawmakers who have historically supported the oil and gas industry are now starting to sponsor bills that favour EVs, in part because their constituents are buying the vehicles. Basically, more and more voters are saying we want EVs, and that's on both sides of politics. So eventually, what that means is their leaders who are elected to lead them start to realise that, and therefore have to change their policies. And that means that political stereotypes around EVs are really no longer relevant. If you hear the media make these claims, I'd say just ignore them. If you hear commenters, and you see commenters, whether it's on my channel or elsewhere, make these kinds of claims, you know, I often see this stuff where I think, do you really need to target the right? Give them a break. There's no need. Just calm down. It's totally unnecessary. It's completely pointless because both sides of politics have their pros and cons. Electric vehicles have been weaponized by conservative politicians for political gain, though, unfortunately, and that has driven some of the stereotypes. In Australia, during the 2019 federal election, we saw then Prime Minister Scott Morrison run a fear campaign around EVs to attack opposition leader Bill Shorten's election promise of 50% EV market share by 2030. He said it wouldn't work. You know, we hear all these claims like electric vehicles will ruin your weekends. They'll destroy the fabric of society. Even Stellantis, the CEO, even says that about EVs. I mean, then you've got other claims by, you know, the Prime Minister of Australia saying that Tesla's big battery is a big banana. It's a big waste of money. It'll be a flop. It won't work. Well, we all know what happened there. It was a huge financial success. Not just a financial success, but it worked incredibly well. So well, in fact, that they doubled the size of it. And unfortunately, it's some of our leaders, our elected leaders, who are saying the craziest things. It's not going to tow your trailer. It's not going to tow your boat. It's not going to get you out to your favourite camping spot with your family, said Scott Morrison, who was the Prime Minister in Australia, on EVs, claiming that they won't work for anyone, pretty much, who wants any adventure, who wants a little fun. Bill Shorten wants to end the weekend when it comes to his policy on electric vehicles. Well, to be honest, I don't really think, if you're an Australian, I want to know what you think on this, guys. I actually think, whether or not you're right or left, most people will have to agree with me that Scott Morrison was just an idiot. I mean, some of the comments that he made will go down as some of the stupidest things ever said by a publicly elected official in the history of the universe. I mean, seriously, the guy was like an absolute muppet. During the campaign, then Minister for Small Business Michaelia Cash continued the EV scare campaign, implying that tradespeople would be forced to drive EVs under a Shorten government. What I worry about for people like Johnny is that the car he's driving today if a Labor government is elected. It will not be the car he's driving tomorrow, said Cash during the 2019 campaign. In fact, if you look behind this at all those apprentices, here 50% of those apprentices will be driving an electric vehicle under Bill Shorten. We're going to stand by our tradies and we're going to save their utes. Save their utes. These kind of comments make me sometimes think that politicians should be jailed if we know they're lying. If it turns out we know they clearly lied intentionally and they knew they were lying, I think we should have some sort of more serious punishments for them, because they lead a lot of stupid people astray. And to be fair, a lot of the population are they're easily led. They're like sheep. They don't want to do their own research. They listen to what politicians say and they go, oh wow, EVs are bad for everyone. Renewable energy was going to kill the planet. And they start to believe these kinds of ridiculous comments. Incredibly, think back to 2019. Back then, Australia's EV penetration was 0.2%. Now, without BYD and Tesla, it wouldn't be above about 1 to 1.5% max. However, thanks to those two companies, we're at just over 7% this year. 4 years on, and it seems absurd to suggest Australia wouldn't hit 50% electric vehicles. 4 years on, and Daniel Bleakley says it's absurd to say that Australia wouldn't hit 50% EV uptake by 2030 with national support and with EVs hitting 8% already. I mean, we're looking at 7 years into the future. And the fact that Australia is so willing and ready to adopt and buy electric cars from China, I think means that this disruption will happen incredibly quickly. Now, the other thing I've been saying for a long time is once a few tradies buy compelling electric vehicles, compelling electric utes, electric pickup trucks, which will be available within the next 2, 3, 4 years. And once their mates see how good they are, this disruption will happen quicker. I believe it will happen even quicker in that sector of the industry than others, because there's some massive advantages to an electric ute or an electric pickup truck. So the weekends won't be ruined. In fact, the weekends will be significantly improved. But what are your thoughts on this? Let me know if you agree or you disagree. And as always, my friends, have a great day. Bye-bye.